I'm making another video today. Welcome back. God, it's been a while. I apologize. I've just been watching the world meltdown and the rise of stupidity. And there's a lot of people awakening, but there's been a huge push on just stupidity, ignorance, mockery, ridicule. But and it's really weird because it's not as bad as it used to be, because you can see that all the fake accounts have been sort of like are constantly being deleted, and then with our help we block them and this and that, but they still pop up. It's not as bad as before, but I guess it just affects me more now because, like, in this day and age, after everything that I've put out alone, not to mention all you other amazing truthers out there, and how deep we can go into these rabbit holes now because they've taken sort of the chains off of Google and stuff. If you know what you're doing, you can easily search things now. The ridicule just irritates me maybe even more, but whatever, that's all part of it. Been ridiculed my whole life, laughed at, and that's why I like making these videos, because it gives me a sense of worth, because I think when you're in the Great Awakening, it's really hard to make money. I know that's a weird statement, but it is literally really hard to hold down a job and work with people that are, not awake, and then also working for companies that are maybe even going, maybe aren't awake, or actually actively participating in the demise of the human race. And the worst thing too is, like, there's a lot of people out there that think they're like pretty high and mighty. Maybe that's not the term. Like, they think that they're pretty well educated and and well along in life, and that their belief system is altruistic and all that, but it's not. I mean, even I probably believe that. I think my beliefs are altruistic, but we've all got to battle the dark and try to work with the light. Anyway, what I was going to say is, I sort of lost my thought there. This is going to be just like a journey through the things that I've been thinking. I'll think out loud. Now, I've just read a new book by Richard Shaver. It's volume 8. You can get it on Amazon. Richard Shaver, but Simple Welder, writing some of the most profound scientific and, some of the stories. Everything this guy has talked about, I can't disprove. Not one thing. Now, there is a little bit of swarminess, or, there's a little bit of shadow as to who this man really is. I believe he's who he says he is, which is just a simple welder. And they took him in. He ended up going into a mental institution. Sound familiar, right? They always go into mental institutions. Freemasons love that. So that's my first clue. I wonder if some of this was given to him, or he was used as an MK Ultra patient, or maybe he was a Freemason outright, although I haven't seen any proof of that. However, he did work with Roy Palmer, who was his editor, and who freely admits that they did change some of his stories. I can't remember the name of this particular story. I could go look it up, but this one is about a scientist that was working in the jungles of South America, and I think it was like a banker that was sent down there to go and talk to this guy. And I think because he was financing this thing, so he goes down there to talk to this basically a mad scientist living in the jungle, right? And when he gets there, he realizes that I can't remember totally the story, but there's a giant girl, a beautiful giant girl there. She's like, I don't know, I think in the story she's like 20 feet, 30 feet tall. And there's a bunch of beings down there, and there's little beings, and this is all kind of going on. And this banker's like, hey, what is all this? And he's like, basically, I'm creating life. And so then that process was disclosed, and I just have to get this all off my chest because there's a lot of stuff. Okay, so this process of creating life was basically taking like this viscous fluids of, oh, that's right. So he would take light, he would take like a deer or something and put it in this light, this tank, and it would dissolve them, but it also keep the deer alive as it was dissolving. And then once it was dissolved, it was like pure life. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but there is a thing called where right when the egg is inseminated on any animal, including a human, right as the sperm enters into the egg, it's called something. I forget what that's called. Starts with an S. Anyways, somebody smarter than me will understand what I'm saying here. But that right there, or when it goes into like 4, it'll change from 1 cell to 2, then to 4, and right as it changes to 4, I think is when they grab that, and that's how they create life now. You know, in the cloning chambers, hello, they've been doing this. So this is like probably, you know, this story being told was maybe like in the 20s, 30s, maybe possibly a little earlier. We don't know. Was it true? When I was reading this, I was like, oh, this is fiction. This is a fun fantasy fictional tale, right? You know? Which goes against my belief and what I've said a bunch of times, that everything that Richard Shaver said is true. So I was like, okay, so maybe he's just using fiction, which is what Ray Palmer admits, saying that they did change the stories to make it more palatable, more fictionable, so that people could read it. More often than not, fiction is truth, and the truth is the fiction, right? That's super Freemasonry. So that's another hit right there, right? Was Roy Palmer a Freemason? Were they both Freemasons? We don't know. Anyway, so back to the story. The mad scientist was dissolving an animal, in this case a deer, dissolves it in a vat, still alive. At that point, he takes holographic technology and basically overlays a light onto the vat. And that was a projection. He was using like remember back in school, what were those called? The screen projectors that we would use. So it was something probably like that. He had some literature, or maybe it was a pamphlet. Anyways, a picture of Leonardo da Vinci's man and woman. And I think that he'd overlaid this projector so that it would project this perfect symmetry of this human, who, by the way, Leonardo da Vinci, if he was even a real person, was definitely a Freemason, right? And all the stuff that he was hiding, he was definitely in secret societies, right? And so he would know about these Atlanteans, who were probably the perfect race. They were like the perfect version of a human being, and gigantic, and always growing and never dying. And so he would project, so this mad scientist projected this on the vat. The vat, it was at that point, immediately, because the still alive ooze that was in the vat that was once a deer, because it was still alive, it immediately sensed the design of what he was. It probably could have been anything, but in this particular case, it was Da Vinci's perfect man, perfect human, a woman, I think. You'll have to go and read this story, and I'll try and get the name before we end this video. And he projected that onto the ooze, and the ooze started to form. It started to take that design that it was that light was projecting into it. Right, okay, there's a point to this story, just bear with me. And it started to form itself to the point where it just took on that form. And that's where that large, gigantic woman had come from. Now, he'd done this with other stuff, and I forget the ins and outs of that part of the story. That's not particularly the point of where I'm going with this. So if you scroll down into my account, I don't even know how to get into my own account. If you scroll down into my account, you'll see a video here of, well, let's see. Yes, a short video here of the meat suit tech. Right, and you can just go into that video. And that's, I mean, in a way, what Richard Shaver was writing about and what's going on here in this Project Lucifer, and I'll let it play out here for a second. Go ahead.
The heart module?
Heart module.
To activate the blood circulation. Now.
Right, so you can see there, he electronically plugged that in, and that heart started beating. If you go through that video, you'll see that he puts a torso on, some arms and legs, and it totally moves. The thing that he plugged in was a brain, and that's the electrical circuitry, basically. And that's how our bodies work. So we are meat suits. We are meat robots. And a row, again, I'm going to say this like I've said it 100 times, I'm going to say it 100 more times. The row, and that came from Richard Shaver, right? So the row means that they're rowing us, or it originally was thought through energy transfer through the air, basically through the ether, a frequency like a radio wave, and it taught this row class of people that lived and worked in Atlantis how to build things. I would assume that's how they built everything. It also could work for like nanobots. You know, I think a lot of these temples and stuff that are like carved out of one stone, one block, and things like that, I think it could be nanotechnology because it's all perfectly created. Yeah, I know they had stone technology, and that's been written about quite a bit. That would infer that there's people out there. I would assume the small people would be us, like us humans, the atomites, and we were the row, and we got our information through this frequency, just like we get information like through the TV on YouTube. It's the same thing. Nothing's changing here. Nothing's changing because everything's simple. The universe is simple, yet complicated. Its inner workings are quite complicated, but overall, you can make it quite simple. So getting back to the mad scientist, he projects light onto this ooze. The ooze starts growing, and it grows into whatever you put into, whatever you programmed into that. Here we got Project Lucifer, where they're creating meat suits. We know that they can create, robotoids, and I mean these are robotoids. Here it is. We know we've got. You can go back down, and look at my videos about the sniper who talked about how the blue-blooded robotoids and then you can go see movies that they've created zombies and robots. And what's the difference between a robot and a zombie, really? Robots that have blue blood, they were created, right? It's like this blue fluid that they're using as a, I guess the blood really is like, it's like a highway, and that's how we're communicating. Also, chi and electricity runs through the blood system and through your nerve endings, right? So these are all things that are like part of growing something like a suit that you would need to use in the third dimension, because we're spirits, right? We're souls, and we would need to use something to move about. It's like going to the bottom of the sea. Don't get me started on the submarine. And going to the bottom of the sea, you would need a suit because we can't work in that density. And the same thing with the souls. They created these suits to work in this density, right? And the souls are all part of Source. And that's why evil can't win, because evil is the absence of Source. And they're trying to create this bubble and create a bigger bubble so that they can do whatever they want inside this bubble. But the souls that are part of Source, that work for Source, are really controlling all beings. And so even the reptiles and stuff, but they all have to evolve so they can get to a certain level of frequency so that they can start shedding these bodies again. It's sort of like, this is total stream of thought, but it's sort of like, again, being down in the bottom of the ocean. You can't come to the surface right away because you'll get the bends. So what they do, they put you in a bathy chamber, or, a bathy chamber and a pressurized chamber, and they depressurize you as you go up. So I think that once you come down into this third dimension, we're in these meat suits, and the robot is working because the ego is all working. Yeah, sometimes the ego, a lot of times, because the way that this synagogue of Satan has set everything up down here, is they don't want you to think about God, right? They want to distract you with all these other things so that you don't make that source connection, right? And then source is running everything. That's the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to go through your right brain, then through your left brain, not left brain running the right brain, because the left brain's scared and it can easily be manipulated and controlled. Notice how row is in the middle of controlled, row, rolled, right? Row is the center of that word, control, right? And so the row, or the frequency, the science of this frequency got hijacked by selfish people even inside Atlantis. That's another story why that happened, because of the sun and the heavy metal, according to Richard Shaver. But again, and then it started to develop the ego, and then so that's all connected somehow. And so basically they're using that for mind control, again with the row in there, mind control, and government, which is basically gov, which is to control, and ment, which is menta, is your mind. Government, control your mind. It's that simple. Everything you see is mind control and frequency. But remember, you can mind control your own body and your own destiny. So I highly recommend that you do that. That's how long is this video already? I don't know. But I had to get that off my chest. So that's one story, and the story ends where the mad scientist dies, and what ended up happening is somehow whatever he was doing was filtered out into the existing wildlife and fauna, flora and fauna, and so all that turns sentient as well. And it was like this, in the story, it was like this big deal. It was going to start taking over the world because it was like slowly growing larger and larger out of the middle of this jungle. And at that point, I was like, oh, we're just having a bit of fun with this this fictional story that he's writing to get out to the masses. Some, interesting science, interesting things to think about when it comes to real science. This, real science that's really being done, because all this stuff's being done in the underground. The science you see on the surface world is all smoke and mirrors and just plastic, fantastic, nothing. It'll never go anywhere, and it's all based on bad mathematics and misinformation. But it got me to really thinking. I mean, because that goes against everything I'm saying with that Richard Shaver stuff is very real, and he always claimed that it was actually true. And I thought, well, I don't think that could really be true, because we would have heard something about it. But then you think, well, AI, that's a form of AI. Everything turns sentient, and just like in the Matrix movie, right? Okay, so where everything was part of the Matrix, the walls and the people would turn on you, and the walls could turn on you. I mean, really. And that's actually the world that we're living in. The entire world that we're living in, if you do the right things, you can actually see into this world, and it's like a string universe where everything is connected to the other thing, and it's just an agreed set of frequencies, right? Where some frequencies can't go through stuff, solid matter. Other frequencies can flow, water, or rise because of the density, gas, gas and things like that. I've had soul beings or entities show me how they can float and swim through solid matter, and it's something that the yogis claim to do. So this isn't something that's a new subject. I guess an AI could get into something like that and start changing things, and we can see now that we are on sort of, again, that's happening today. Good AIs battling bad AIs. I think that's all handled right now. Well, maybe not, but I think that that's being looked at and taken care of. But, because I'm not trying to scare anybody here, but these are all things we need to think about because they are happening. Now, the next point out of this story. So once again, Richard Shaver being proven correct like 100 years later. Another thing I got out of the story was he's projecting design onto the ooze to create life. This gets into what we just talked about with the cloning and with the meat suit robotoids. and you can totally just create a meat suit and control that as long as you're like that in that video. As long as you can control the brain there, that's the electronic portion you can see to the right. And then we, through computer interface, we could control that, and you could, I suppose, download your soul consciousness, right? And then there's that technology going on. Maybe they can even capture your soul. We know about the soul recycling scam. I think it's what it's soul recycling scam. So look into that, where the white light is where you go back and they wipe you and they put you back into this matrix, this world again. And who are these people? Well, the ladder starts down here on the surface world, and it goes down into the deep underground, and also goes out into, the ether and the spirit realm with these beings that are telling the controllers, the third dimensional controllers here in this world, what to do. Maybe they're even living in suits. I mean, that's definitely all going on. The Germans would have, sex, encouraged to have sex, especially the officers, in graveyards, so that they could inculcate the souls of their ancestors into their babies. And this is all occult knowledge. I mean, that is definitely, it's happening. If they're doing it, it's happening. It's real, okay? If it's in a movie, it's probably real. And if it's not real, they're working desperately to make it happen. God, I kind of got lost. Okay, so getting back to projecting information into life ooze that's alive, and then creating life out of that, that gets into the medbeds. And it also gets into Sumerian and Egyptian, which, quite frankly, could be very close to the same sort of civilization. It might have just been different parts of this worldwide civilization with different beings running it. Gods, basically. Remember, God originally is a person, a being that can change and alter and create life. Change and alter the universe, material universe around you, and alter life and also create life. And so if you see on these, on the hieroglyphics that they have, and you study Sumerian stories of like Enki and Ninsurga, who could be Lilith. I don't know. I forget how this all goes, but those two gods created life, and on the bas relief, it shows that they are beaming something down into something, and then these beings are walking out. So they're creating the row. Now, are these Atlanteans that were doing this? It could be maybe Atlantis too. I do believe the original Atlantis was a very altruistic, noble society, and then it slowly started breaking down over time. And again, we've talked about this, the ethics of living in the third dimension, because, the way we're living, we're constantly meting out death. I mean, how much life do we actually give? That's why they're always telling us to love. Because just the very act of our living is creating death. We eat things, step on things, have accidents. Whereas in that perfect world, they never stopped growing and life. But even then there was death, because there were creatures in the jungles and woods that were dangerous. Right? So even in this Atlantean utopia, things were still dangerous, even though that death was really not something that they considered at all. I think it still somehow must have existed. It just depends on reading all his stories on what the timeline is, and whether it's the first Atlantis or the subsequent Atlantises afterwards. And I again, just me, my personal opinion, I think it's fallen 3 times, maybe the 4th. So it was like the original Atlantis, and somehow that had something to do with Mu. Maybe Mu was already there, and then this technological society sat down, and I think that they worked together but then slowly there was a rift, separated. Slowly, the sun started changing. The ego started growing. Evil started happening. Death started happening, and aging because of the sun as well. And then that puts you into a flight or fight risk mentality, and then that gets us all to the modern day of like war and egocentrism and okay. But anyway, I wanted to get back into the med beds. So if your arm got cut off, as the super soldiers quite often talk about, or their leg or something, even blown off horribly, not a precision cut, you can put that underneath the holographic light, and they're using your own perfect DNA that they've already taken from you, and that's computerized into the network, and then they overlay a holographic image of your perfect DNA light system as if your arm was there, and you put your arm into that light, and your body will immediately, because remember, your body is a machine, and it's not supposed to die. It wasn't created to die. It's just created to house our soul. It's a temple of the spirit. But as you lay your arm there, what's left of your body, you put that into where the arm is on the holographic medbed, and then your arm will grow back. Same thing with your liver, or or whatever it is that you're trying to grow back. So, I mean, I just wanted to bring that story out there. I just had to get it off my chest. It's some weird stuff. I mean, I could just go on forever. I mean, if you don't believe Atlantis existed, I would suggest look at the size of everything. And if you go on all my platforms, Telegram and especially Facebook, you'll see all the stuff that I'm putting out there. This is just more of a stream of thought here. I'd love to do better videos, and I'm going to attempt to keep doing that. But as you can see, it's a struggle for me to even get one video out. I'm going to try and do another one today, actually, too. So with more pictures. I was going to say, anyway, oh yeah, Atlantis, did it exist? Check out the columns. The columns are everywhere. There's a reason for these columns. It has something to do with energy and the ether and some sort of conductivity. The use of basalt rock, which has crystals in it, and used quite often mined in a specific place and then taken somewhere else. Only giants could do this sort of thing. And the giants subsequently had amazing intelligence, right? You hear all these stories about giants eating people and stuff like that. But, I mean, if you think about it, we would have been like a pesky animal to these great and giant and mighty beings. So, I mean, you've probably gone into the backyard and killed a few ants today already. So it's, we really shouldn't be judging anything. And the mighty red-haired giants of Kandahar and of the Indian plains that used to come out and eat people, they might have just turned feral because they've been living in this energy for so long. They don't die. They're not dying. And that's why they live in the underground, because they're hiding from the sun. So once again, these points seem to prove and point towards the fact that Richard Shaver is on to something. Whatever's going on in this guy's books, he's on to something. And that's turned me on to so many other books like H.P. Foster, not H.P. Foster, E.P. Oh, God, I can't think of his name now. Another prolific horror writer. Let me see if I can find it. His name is... Oh, well, I don't want to do dead air. But he's... Oh, gosh. Let me see. Horror writers. Horror writer. Dean Koontz is great. All these guys that write... Oh, H.P. Lovecraft. That's what I'm talking about. If you study H.P. Lovecraft, he's got... And Ray Bradbury, although I've never really read too much of him... There's another guy, there's a series of books called Sinjin something or other. That's, I've heard, is quite good. Dean Koontz will show you a lot of things. I don't read Stephen King because his writing sucks. He's a horrible writer. Boring. H.P. Lovecraft, Richard Shaver, and Dean Koontz. If you just read those three exclusively, you would understand what's really going on in this world, especially when it comes to the Satanists and what they're doing and how they're controlling the world and who they are. There's three things that are destroying the world and being used by the underground, the Satanists, and that is usury in many forms and many names, okay? And that includes religion and banking. And remember, religion is rely, to rely over and over again. But originally, this is my belief, studying words, entomology, is the original word is rely, because it sounds like rely with a Y, and you rely on something, right? You have to rely on something. So when these souls or astronauts, maybe they were three-dimensional or higher dimensional, sort of astronauts came down to wherever this is, this crater on a larger planet, maybe? I don't know. When they came down here, they had to rely on a certain set of lists to keep them alive. And that's what turned into a religion. And then they turned that rely into a jinn, which is a religion. And of course, for control, they started lying so that you didn't know all the truth and you can't be as great and powerful as they are, right? If I don't let you work out and use your brain and keep you in the dark like a mushroom, you're not going to be as good as I am. So I'll win. The second thing that they're using is stupidity, right? You see this, you're going to hear me say this a lot. I use different names. I can't use the names that I really use. It would make more sense, but it's stupidity, like in the movie Idiocracy and Who Was the President, and it's just all this ghetto gang ebonics talk because you're not gonna, if that's how you talk, then that's as smart as you're gonna ever be, right? If that's as most as you're ever gonna aspire to, is some sort of street thug, right? Nobody goes to school anymore, and when they do, they come out looking like purple-haired, fatzos that have been in the dorm with no sun, right? Which gets me to my third thing, which is homosexuality. So those are the three things: usury, banking, right? They're taking they've created money so that they can take your money so that you don't have anything, and then they can own everything, right? Sound familiar? Second thing, stupidity. They're dumbing everybody down, and certain groups of people have started dumbing themselves down already. That's all part of it. The third thing is homosexuality, and just right off the bat, that just means no children. And then they can create the children, right? Because ultimately, this whole thing is not about anything other than one thing. It's the machine world in the Matrix. They want to create a machine world that works outside of the organic circle of karma that the spirit realm works on, and they're trying to get out of the spirit realm, but everything is the spirit realm, even the mechanics of a machine, and it can easily be altered by my mind and my consciousness and my soul and spirit. But they don't seem to understand that. But they do understand it, because they want to live in the machine and stay out of the realm of karma and live forever. So this whole thing is about transhumanism, Satanism. It's about a godless mechanical society. That's simply what it boils down to. And they use those three things: usury and debt, stupidity, and homosexuality. And everybody right now who's has to face those three issues right now, and they're just being shoved in everybody's faces by certain groups of people. So anyway, that's the end of my my dialogue today for this video, and thanks for being here. All right, bye.